How do I deal with my suspicions of substance abuse in the team? Welcome to Perfection's Antidote. I'm Belinda Brummer.
And I'm Tracy Kites.
We're on a mission to help you navigate the situations you might find yourself in at work. In each episode, we'll bring you
one question,
2 perspectives,
3 takeaways. Our aim here is to keep it real, simple, filter-free.
If you enjoy learning tools that help you lead and work better, subscribe to this podcast and please do leave a review. If you have any questions for the show, please send them to us. You'll find a link about how to do this in the show notes.
Today, we've got a question from Mairead, who's in Dublin. She is working in an IT consultancy firm, and she's been a supervisor of operations for a few years there. This is quite a sensitive topic from Mairead. She says that she suspects that one of her team members is dealing with substance abuse issues. She knows that their work is suffering, but they haven't disclosed any personal problems. She asks what's her responsibility here, both as a manager and as a human being. So, in summary, I guess Mairead is asking how should she deal with her suspicions of substance abuse in a member of her team.
Oh, yeah, that is a sensitive one, but one that I think is well worth asking and a question well worth answering. So the HR person in me first comes out here, Tracy. I think the first thing to be aware of is that to disclose something is a personal decision. So the fact that Mairead has suspicions, those are her own suspicions, but we cannot force anybody in the workplace to disclose some. That could range from I have a disability to I have family challenges, or in this case, potentially a substance abuse issue. It cannot force somebody to disclose something. In addition, certainly in Ireland and probably any EU country, and I believe in the UK as well, there are grounds on which you cannot discriminate in Ireland in the employment context. And one of those grounds is medical conditions. And addiction, if, for example, there is an addiction issue here, addiction in certain circumstances can fall under those medical conditions. And so before Mairead or any manager listening decides to deal with the poor performance element or the suspicion element of substance abuse, I really, really recommend talk to your HR person, talk to a legal advisor, because you need to make sure that any action or decision that you make is within the bounds of the legal requirements, particularly under discrimination. And then finally, before we get into what would we suggest Mairead do, is that really depending on the work that this individual is doing, there may also be a very grave health and safety risk or policy violation. And so I mentioned that context is so important for me. In this particular context is very important. If somebody has substance abuse and they are, kind of dealing in a medical field, for example, that there may be some real challenges that need to be considered in far more detail and more closely than we would have a conversation about here. So just to be aware of that. And then, my own perspective on this, if I set aside those HR caveats, Mairead only has a suspicion here. Even if she has certain grounds that she feels are grounds for that suspicion, it is only a suspicion. There is an onus here on talking about the work. That's what the person is doing, and that's what the concern is, because the work is suffering. So as the manager, you talk about the work. What was the expectation? What is the reality? You're empathetic, but you don't inquire. You don't say, well, I think, you're not doing well because I think you've got a challenge, or you don't look so bright in the morning on Monday mornings, and I think it's because of X. You don't do that. You talk about the work, you talk about the outcomes, what's happening there, and you deal with it as a normal performance management issue until you have reason to believe or reason that you're collaborating with or cooperating with the person to deal with it differently. It is a normal performance management process.
Yeah, and for me, the basis of that performance management process, if you like, is always needing to be deeply human. I have a very deep passion that leadership is human, that the way that we interact with our teams and colleagues is deeply human. You actually have to give a damn about the person to be a great leader, in my opinion. And part of the work that I've done around deeply human leadership is around an understanding of trauma-informed input. So trauma-informed care and support is a big issue in health and social care settings. But I want to bring that into leadership settings. And what I mean by that is we have to understand, A, that the people that we're working with are human, come with messy emotions, messy situations attached. That's not to say we have to be someone's therapist, but we do have to understand that we mostly have all been through situations in our life that have impacted us, that have changed the way we think, changed the way we react, changed the way that we live our lives. And we should be able to do that, providing it doesn't impact on our work without judgment. So for me, the principles of trauma-informed sit here. But I've worked in loads of situations where people have taken that to the extreme. So I don't want anyone to read into that in a way that they've got to know every detail of everything that's going on with their people, and they are responsible for being their counsellor, their therapist, or nurturing them through some kind of life crisis, because that's not what leaders are there for. However, what we are there for is to make sure that people are enabled to come to work and give their very best, and that at times people will hit points of their life where they're functioning less than they would like to. And our role is to enable them to move through that in whatever way they need to, so that they can continue to give their best at work. So we don't need to know the details. I'm really keen to say that. We do not need to know the details of what's going on in our colleagues' lives. If they choose to tell us, that's another matter. We should always be asking the question, why do you need me to know this? What do you need from me in telling me this? Because if they're expecting some therapy back, you need to refer them to someone who is in a position to give them that. It's not you. So don't feel that we've got to know everything there is to know about something. I would always say, don't advise people. You're not there to be someone's life advisor. It's about coaching. Who can help you best with this? How can I help you? What's the reason that you're giving me this information? All of those things will enable you to stay in your position as a leader and manager, and to facilitate somebody else to stay in control of the choices and the actions that they need to take. Because as a leader, we need to be enabling people to take the action that's right for them in that moment, not give them advice about what we might do if we were in their situation.
Yeah, and to build on that, so in this instance that Mairead is talking about, the person hasn't said that they have a substance abuse. So up until this point, the person doesn't seem to have said anything. There is only a suspicion. And I have come across this type of thing, indeed, with substance abuse as well in the workplace. And one of the things that we've been able to do where the person hasn't disclosed it, and so we're not yet dealing with information, we're only dealing with what we think is happening, but wanting to help the person as much as you can and as much as is within the scope of employment. We've been able to offer and put on different programs, whether it's in a well-being program, whether it's stress management programs, whatever it might be, that there is a general program that is rolled out across the organization that feels just in time, really, for that particular person or that individual. And so it's not calling them out saying, we think you've got a problem and here's a program we think you should go on. But it's saying there's a stress management program going on at the moment, HR or L&D or whoever is putting it on in the organization, and our team can go, it's our team up next, or 3 people from our team can go on that program this month, or who would like to go, and really just making it available. Again, you cannot force anybody to do anything here, to attend those kind of programs, but really just making it available to them. And that means that you, again, are working in partnership with your HR team, who probably, or your L&D team, whoever it is. And you may or may not disclose to them who the individual is. You may just say, do you know what, I've noticed in my team that my team may be dealing with things like blah, 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 and I wonder whether we couldn't put on a program for the wider team or the wider organization. So again, you're not making it about that person, you're not highlighting that person, but you are providing them with some way to deal with what they're dealing with within the context of work. And then, to your point, Tracy, what they do with it then is their decision. But it's about giving them ways to take it further if they wanted to. So Mairead's question was very much, what's my responsibility here, both as a manager? Well, as a manager, you deal with the poor performance, you help the person within the scope of the role, within the scope of the organisation and what's asked of them. But then also, what's my responsibility as a human being? And that is to be respectful, to show up for them, and then also to guard the rest of the team in case that substance abuse spills over, the issues spill over into the team, and to be there for the team and just to be aware of that and to keep your radar alert for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's one more thing that I'm just thinking here as well, which is on the basis that we're all human beings. So Mairead probably knows her colleague really well, and she will have very definite grounds to suspect that there's something going on around substance abuse or whatever that might be. However, I think as leaders and as human beings, we also have a responsibility to ask ourselves the question, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong here? I've got lots of evidence perhaps that makes me suspect this, but what if I'm wrong? Because fundamentally, we always ought to step into our decision-making from the viewpoint of, I suspect this, but if I'm wrong, how do I want to tackle that? Not how do I want to tackle it if I get it wrong, but in case I'm wrong, what's the measures and boundaries that I need to put into my intervention in case what I suspect is wrong? I certainly ask myself that a lot of the time. I think this, but if I'm wrong, how does that impact what I do next? And normally it makes me much more neutral and general and measured in my first interventions until I know that I'm right.
The question we've pondered here was, how do I deal with my suspicions of substance abuse in the team? Now, your power of 3. Always be clear about your company policies, HR requirements, and the rights of individuals to not disclose their personal information. Deal with what you observe in work, not what you suspect is going on personally. Know your role and that it is one of support, not therapy or counselling. If someone chooses to tell you about a personal issue, keep the conversation in professional boundaries. Ask questions such as, what do you need from me? How can I support you? And who could help you best with this? Did something we talk about spark something in you? An idea or a memory? Please share it with us in the comments below. Follow us. We're real and unfiltered. This show is brought to you by, well, us. Tracy Kite is a leadership and management development specialist, executive coach, and author of Lead Like You Give an F. And I'm the founder of Boost Learning, a boutique ecosystem that nurtures better managers and leaders. I also help organizations amplify their culture, train their people, and build better community connections through podcasting.